Through the 1970s, the larger clubs who could buy the pick of the professionals ignored black players. Smaller clubs had little choice but to go with local talent, whatever its colour. But in 1979, from one such club emerged a young star who was to become the first non-white player to be picked for England.
I was just so nervous, and I just wanted to get on with the game, and I was just really focused on trying to play well on the night, and everything else passed by. It's only now, you know, 14, 15 years later, you think there was never a black person been capped before, and that must have helped John Barnes and, you know, Luther Blissett and the other people that came after me.
At a stroke, Anderson's selection destroyed a series of myths that had kept black players out of the top flight.
It was a bit of a whispering campaign about, yeah, you know, they might be athletic and all that, they might be quick, but, you know, they don't really know how to tackle, they don't really know how to defend, they're not disciplined enough when it comes to winter, they don't like training in the cold. All those, you heard it.
When the cold weather comes, they don't perform, and this, that, and the other. And here comes a skinny little kid from Nottingham who kicks people for a living and plays for England, you know. I broke the mould in that respect.
Well, what a wonderful start. Most Blair ex-country.
Anderson's selection was the start of a trend that saw a transformation in the English game. In 1987, John Barnes became the first black player to be bought by the country's most successful club, Liverpool. The cash came flooding into the game from TV and satellite deals, and clubs were floated on the stock market. The biggest teams became far more interested in the colour of money than in the colour of the players who brought them success.
As the years went by, you saw more and more black kids playing football. And I think it's just a sheer weight of numbers that football couldn't ignore the talent that was available to them. And eventually, that's led to where we are today.
Ferdinand!
By 1995, the three most expensive players in Britain were black. In the same year, Manchester United's Paul Ince captained England.
I can't think of any way, shape or form that black players will not be an integral part of the England setup. They're here to stay. And as I say, you know, you look at Paul Ince, who's captain of the full England team, look what he did in Rome and the acceptance of his role that he played there.
When England qualified for the 1998 World Cup in a grimly fought draw with Italy, black players embodied the team's grit and courage. Paul Ince was the nation's Captain Courageous. Ian Wright was England's Lionheart. In a nation where sport has become the principal expression of national pride, black Britons have become standard bearers.
Multiculturalism is a divisive force. Youngsters of all races born here should be taught that British history is their history. If they are not, they will be forever foreigners holding British passports.
But not every voice is raised in a hymn of praise to multicultural Britain.
This kingdom will become
Last autumn, Lord Tebbit repeated his 1990 warning that black Britons could not be regarded as truly British until they were ready to cheer for England against the West Indies. 8 years ago, it threw the government into confusion. This time, his own leader dismissed it as the ramblings of a dinosaur. Just weeks before the Tebbit speech, William Hague had been out on the streets of Notting Hill. His attitude could not have been clearer.
Well, I've just come to see what happens here at the Carnival. It's the biggest cultural event in the nation. I think politicians ought to be out and about here.
What started a generation ago as a largely West Indian event is now a 3-day national festival where Caribbean people and their descendants are in a minority on the streets. It is a vivid example of the way that Britain itself has been changed since those first 500 set off on their adventure aboard the Empire Windrush 50 years ago. They came from island colonies with a British flag, a British king, and even British passports.
London, this lovely city. You can go to France or America, India, Asia, or Australia, but you must come back to London City.
You see, back home, we had the foolish saying, we are British. And coming here, I felt British. I knew I wasn't English, although a lot of black people think they were English because they had English in their mind. But they didn't realize to be English, you had to be born here. But I am British, and I love the country.
Even those early voyagers who made it back to the Caribbean as they originally intended find themselves longing for what has become their real home, England. If anyone fulfilled the immigrant dream of returning home having made their fortune abroad, it is the multi-millionaire owner of this mansion in Montego Bay. Joe Witter came to Britain in 1954, and over the next 3 decades amassed a fortune in property. He returned to Jamaica in 1980.
When I come back to Jamaica, it was a little bit funny because I could never get accustomed to this slow movement, you know. You get here and anything you want to get done, you can never get it done today. It's always tomorrow. Oh, that's all right, man, leave it. We'll get it done next week. I get very annoyed. I miss a lot of things about England, you know, in that. And the folks get to know me. I become a part of the English family. They get to love me, I love them, you know, I go anywhere. And it was great. As far as I'm concerned, Britain is my home.
There is little doubt that returnees like Joe Witter have been changed by their time in Britain. Windrush passenger Newton Christian, like most other migrants of his generation, has never returned. For him, Britain, with all its problems and difficulties, has now become a home that the land of his birth can never be.
I've been living in Britain for 54 years. My family were born over here. And as far as Jamaica is concerned, no, I love the country, but to me, to return there to live permanently, it's out of the question, because it's like a strange country. Nobody knows me, and I know nobody.
In the passage of half a century, Britain has changed out of all recognition from the place the original Windrush voyagers discovered. Some of those changes have been made by the Windrush generation, their children, and their grandchildren. Their biggest legacy is to have changed for good what it means to be
British. They can only be black and British because what British means has been transformed, largely by them. Until 2 decades ago, Britishness was coded racially and in color terms. Everybody knew to be British meant to be white. You didn't have to say white British, because that's what it meant. Well, I don't think it's true. I think you can be who you are. You can be black. You can have come to Englishness or Britishness in the 90s by a very different route from the Caribbean, via the colonial relation, on the Empire Windrush, through migration into the inner city. This is a British history. It's one of the many British histories. Those of us who are still here feel we're part of Britain. And it will take an atom bomb to change from that attitude, as far as we're concerned.
Yes, I'm British, but whether they allow me to be British, it's another question, isn't it?
I'm cultured through Britishness, if there's such a word, but I am of African, West Indian origin. That's what I am. I will never be an English rose. Don't want to be an English rose, but yes, I'm British. If I can't deny that.
How do I feel now, whether I'm black or British? I think I'm a bit of both, really. I'm black and I'm definitely British, you know, and that's what I am.